Welcome back, everyone. These are the stories we are sharing from Advocate. Colorado takes new shot to curb harmful conversion therapy abuse. In the wake of a recent U.S. Supreme Court decision that curtailed states' ability to prohibit so-called conversion therapy outright, Colorado lawmakers are advancing a bill to deter the practice through civil liability rather than direct bans. The proposal, House Bill 26-1322, would allow people who say they were subjected to conversion therapy to sue licensed mental health providers as well as those who employ or supervise them with no statute of limitations, according to the bill's text. Lawmakers say that change reflects the reality that many survivors do not come forward until years, and sometimes decades after the harm. The bill is both a response to and a test of the Supreme Court's March 31st Childs v. Salazar ruling, which found that talk therapy is protected speech under the First Amendment. As previously reported by the Advocate, the decision did not question the medical consensus that conversion therapy is both ineffective and harmful. Instead, it drew a constitutional boundary around what the government can regulate, not the practice's outcomes, but the words used in a therapeutic setting. That distinction has forced states like Colorado to rethink how to intervene. Rather than banning conversion therapy directly, the bill treats it as professional misconduct with consequences that unfold in civil court. The aim, its sponsors say, is to make offering the practice legally and financially risky enough to prompt providers to abandon it. State Representative Karen McCormick, a Democrat sponsoring the bill, has called the action a necessary adaptation to a shifting legal landscape, one that still leaves the LGBTQ plus people, especially young people of Colorado, vulnerable, according to Sentinel Colorado. The measure applies only to licensed mental health professionals, leaving clergy and most religious counselors outside its reach. One survivor, now 60, described carrying the effects of conversion therapy for decades, telling lawmakers they spent years trying to prove they were worthy, according to Sentinel Colorado. Advocates say those experiences remain widespread. A 2024 survey by the Trevor Project found that more than 1 in 10 LGBTQ plus young people in Colorado reported being subjected to or threatened with conversion therapy in the past year. Unfortunately, we very much know that conversion therapy is alive and well. Casey Pick, the Trevor Project's Senior Director of Law and Policy, told Sentinel Colorado. Legal advocates have emphasized that the Supreme Court's ruling was narrower than it may appear. Legal director at the National Center for LGBTQ Rights, Shannon Minter, previously told the Advocate that the decision was not endorsing conversion therapy, but agreed that it complicates how states can regulate conversion therapy. In other news, a trans man who was forced to leave Idaho to use public bathrooms has joined a lawsuit against the state. Diego Fable has called Idaho home for more than a decade. He is leaving because he needs to use the bathroom. The choice created by House Bill 752 is not a dramatic confrontation or a courtroom argument. It is a decision made before walking out the front door. Where will he go if he needs to use the restroom? What will happen when he gets there? For Fable, a transgender man, those questions have become unbearable. With this new law, I've decided I have no choice but to relocate to a different state to protect myself, he said at a press conference, announcing a federal lawsuit challenging the measure. This is heartbreaking because I consider Idaho my home, and I'd be leaving behind a close-knit community I've developed while living here. The legal challenge filed in the U.S. District Court for the District of Idaho targets a law that makes it a crime to use public restrooms that do not align with a person's sex assigned at birth. The measure applies to government buildings and many places of accommodation, including private businesses, and carries penalties of up to 1 year in jail for a first offense and up to 5 years in prison for repeat violations. But the law's substance is only part of the story. Its speed has become part of the argument. Introduced, debated, and passed within weeks, the bill cleared the Idaho House on March 16th and the Senate on March 27th, before reaching Republican Governor Brad Little's desk, where it was signed on March 31st. Lambda legal attorney Kel Olson, who represents 6 transgender plaintiffs in the case, said the law creates a situation with no workable path. Transgender people do not want to be subject to violence or harassment, Olson told The Advocate in an interview. And so the choice is either to forego restroom use or to walk into a restroom where you know you are going to be perceived to be violating the law. He said the premise that people can simply use a different restroom does not reflect how gender is perceived and enforced in public spaces. By complying with the law, Olson said, it looks like you're violating the law. For transgender people, being perceived in a bathroom could nearly guarantee a police interaction, Olson explained. Fable described that contradiction in practical terms. As a transgender man walking into a women's restroom, the one the law requires him to use, would make him visibly out of place. Since I look like a man, using the women's restroom would only invite suspicion, questions, harassment, and potentially violence, he said. Or do I avoid going out altogether, missing time with my family, with my friends, and impacting my employment? Fable said he sees no safe option. For Amelia Millett, a lifelong Idaho resident, the law's damage is cumulative. I can no longer assume I'll have access to a safe restroom when I'm simply doing my job, she said during the press conference. It forces me to compromise my privacy and safety by using a facility that doesn't align with how I present myself in my daily life. I now also have to evaluate every social activity I participate in against the risk I'll experience if I simply need to use the restroom. The result is an accumulation of small withdrawals from work, from community, from public space itself. This new law will inevitably keep me from engaging with my community and being in public, Millett said. It does not protect anyone. It only puts people like me in danger. Attorneys behind the lawsuit argue the law is unconstitutional on multiple grounds, including violations of equal protection, due process, and privacy rights. None of us can predict when we're going to have an urgent need, he said, and that's going to become necessary even if you try to avoid it. Olson said the law effectively turns a basic bodily need into a legal risk. Even if every place had gender-neutral options, which clearly they don't, Olson said, it makes it functionally impossible to get through your daily life and be able to use a restroom that is not going to both be legal under this law and not cause a major disruption, to say the least. The plaintiffs are asking the court to block the law before it takes effect on July 1st. This law is forcing me to leave my treasured friends and community behind, Fable said. And finally, one thin allegation fueled a national trans panic and an FBI mission to Cuba, touted by Kash Patel. Right-wing activists blew up last week over allegations that a trans woman fled with her child to Cuba to obtain gender-affirming surgery. But was that based on anything more than a single overheard comment? The FBI sent a plane to Cuba, a rare step in a custodial investigation, before the Justice Department trumpeted the arrest of Rose Inessa Ethington and her partner Blue, and alleged they intended to take the child overseas for gender reassignment surgery. The child was reunited with her birth mother. Further scrutiny of the situation has shown that only one investigator in the case ever alleged a secret plan to perform surgery on a 10-year-old, though according to Equal Dex, such procedures are banned for minors in Cuba. Gender-affirming care for minors, especially young ones, consists of counseling and social support. As they reach puberty, puberty blockers can be prescribed. In very rare cases, teenagers may be offered surgical interventions for chest-related procedures. The New Republic reviewed court documents filed after the wildly ballyhooed arrest and found the assertions about gender-affirming care stemmed entirely from a filing by Jennifer M. Waterfield, an agent in the FBI's Violent Crimes Against Children Unit. In a sworn statement, she said a family member expressed concern that Inessa Ethington had manipulated the child into being transgender. Cuban officials apparently assisted the FBI in finding Inessa Ethington and taking her into custody. The Logan City Police Department in Utah, which launched the custody investigation, never mentioned any dispute about gender-affirming care for minors in its own press release about the case. The department said Lindsay Bowden, the child's birth mother, had been unable to contact Inessa Ethington after a scheduled visit, and that Inessa Ethington was discovered to have absconded to Cuba. A warrant was issued, but it did not mention concerns about surgery without the birth mother's consent. That didn't stop FBI Director Kash Patel from touting the arrest to right-wing outlets like the Daily Wire as a success. Each and every day, this FBI is stepping up to protect kids in America at levels never even seen before, identifying and rescuing 6,200 child victims just last year alone, Patel told the outlet. This case is no different. We are proud of our agents, intel analysts, and partners who acted quickly and saved a young child from what could have been a horrific kidnapping. Let it be a message to any criminal actor who would try the same. This FBI will find you, no matter where you try to hide. Investigators tied findings to claims that Inessa Ethington paid for therapy for the child, but there's no documentation in court documents showing whether any of that was related to gender-affirming care. A therapist is not mentioned by name, nor are there details about what care providers in Cuba may treat a 10-year-old child. The New Republic also noted that while gender-affirming surgery is available in Cuba for adults, there have been complaints for years that it is difficult to obtain in the communist country. With that, we're going to take one more break. When we come back, we'll have commentary and some programming notes to share. And we'll be right back after these messages.